Hey there! Today I'm sharing some vintage inspired DIY paper Christmas ornaments. I'd like to welcome you all to CreArtive by Nature DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. So for the first ornament, you're going to need some vintage music paper. I'm going to be showing you 3 ways to break the paper down into the pieces that we need. So first I'm using a metal ruler and I'm just removing that bottom blank piece, and then I'm going to be cutting 2 strips by ripping against the edge of the metal ruler. Next, we'll be creating an accordion style fold for both pieces. So I'm doing this manually, but I do have 2 other tools that you could use instead of just doing this by hand. So this time around, I will be using my paper trimmer by Fiskars. So any of these tools that I'm using, I will try to have some links for you in my Amazon affiliate store if you can't get them in your local craft store. And again, same thing, I am going to be doing the accordion fold for these pieces as well. So an alternative would be to use a scoreboard. This one is the Martha Stewart scoreboard, and I'm just running about every 1/4 inch a score line. And it makes folding so much easier, and all your folds are going to be nice and even. So this option is by far the easiest, and it is using a die cut. So I have my Sizzix die cutting machine, and I'm trimming my paper down to size so it'll fit on my plate. And I will again try to have all the tools that I can find on Amazon available for you in my affiliate store. So I am going to be running the die through my machine 2 times, as you will need 2 pieces of the sheet music. And with this die, it creates an embossed score mark, again, making it so much easier to fold. All right, so I have both my pieces folded in the accordion style, and now I need to attach the 2 pieces together. So I am just taking one end of each piece, and I'm going to be using my tacky glue and adhering them together. Use whatever glue you'd like to use. This one is my favorite. So I'm going to allow that to set for a bit, and then I am going to attach the other side. So I'll set that aside to dry, and then the next step is using these vintage Christmas stickers. I remember playing with these as a kid, and I found this package in the thrift store. So I just chose this deer sticker, and I thought it was so adorable. I wanted to embellish it with this fine glitter paint put out by DecoArt. Again, that'll be in my affiliate store. And I'm going to give it 3 coats. I really love the shimmer that this creates, and the light reflecting off of it is so beautiful. All right, so now it's time to assemble our pieces. So our sticker is all dry. I'm going to set that aside for now. I cut out just a craft paper cardstock out of a 1.5 inch punch. I've got that ready to go. But as you can see, I am pushing down on my accordion folded paper to create a round. So you want to push down and then squeeze it together, and then add a little bit of hot glue. I allow the hot glue to set for a bit and cool, and then I run my finger on it to help set all the paper into place. Now you can use one of those little finger protectors, but mine is a lower temp glue gun, so I find that I don't have a problem with burning. Now I'm adding a generous amount of glue, and I'll put my paper circle into place, and that will be the backing for our music sheet paper. Next, I am going to create my hanger. I have this gold thread, and I'm just measuring how much I need, and then I'll be tying a knot and putting it into place at the back side of our ornament using some hot glue. I'll make sure that the little knot goes between the grooves and our little circle paper punch. All right, so once that's set, then you can start to embellish your ornament. I got this beautiful iridescent glittered tulle from Dollar Tree during Valentine's Day last year. I'm just cutting a square piece and then I'm going to round it off. You can definitely layer any embellishments that you like, that you have on hand. I'm attaching this a little piece of tulle using my tacky glue, as I wasn't sure if my glue gun would melt this tulle or not, so I just wanted to play it safe. Next, I'm adding some light green metallic thread. I picked this up at my local craft store several years ago. It was in my stash and I have seen people use it in paper crafting, and I thought it was such a beautiful touch. So I'm just creating some messy loops, and then I decided that I'd use just a hint of hot glue on top of where my tacky glue was to add this, and it did not melt my tulle since I put it on top of the wet glue. Next, I needed to back my sticker. I needed it to be a lot sturdier, so I'm just using my glue stick and adhering this onto white cardstock. And then I'll cut it out. You can see here I added some dark green metallic thread as well. I wanted to create a little bit of interest, and I wanted to also create some dimension. So I am going to add some foam tape to the back side of our deer sticker, as you can see here. And then I will be just adding some extra adhesive and attach it to the front of our ornament. I love this so much. It definitely gives me some wonderful childhood memories. For our next ornament, I'm using this vintage Christmas card that I found at the thrift store, and I loved the image with this angel and the tree and the deer. I'm just going to be using this circle die set that I have, and I'm just trying to figure out what size of die I need. I decided to go with this one. It is 3 inches across. So again, I'll be using my Sizzix die cutting machine, and I'm just figuring out the placement for my die. I like to use some washi tape just to help hold my die in place, just so it doesn't move as I run it through the machine. If you don't have a die cutting machine, feel free to use a template, trace around it, and cut it out by hand. So now it's time to assemble our pieces and decorate everything. So I am going to be adding some vintage lace to the back side of this ornament. Now, I was inspired by Pinterest lately, and they had something similar, but people had crocheted the edges. I can't crochet. So I thought, well, why can't I add a little bit of lace? So I'm just adhering it with some hot glue. And I discovered that it was kind of warping a little bit, so I am just cutting through the lace, and that helped it to lay flat a whole lot better. So I really love how this is looking so far, but I wanted to add a little bit more, so I'm going to outline our card with this vintage tinsel trim that I had in my stash. It's gold, and so I thought it would match really well with the little touches of gold on the front of this card panel. So I am adding some hot glue and just pressing that trim into place. So I really like how this is looking. It has that vintage feel that I am absolutely loving this year. So I trimmed that off and now it's time to add our hanger. So I'm just using this gold cording again. So I'm just creating my loop, cutting it and then tying it off at the bottom and then gluing it onto the back side of our card ornament. I'm just remembering where the center is and I'm just using some hot glue to attach it. So I want to cover up the mechanics of my work on the backside of the ornament. So to do that, I am going to be using some foam tape. And the reason why I'm doing that is because there's a lot of dimension on the backside of this ornament between the lace and the string. And before I adhere that back circle panel that I created there in white cardstock, I wanted to even it all out on the back. So I'm just filling in the backside with this foam tape and it is the same thickness as our knot on the ornament hanger that you could see there at the back. So I have the backside all filled in with the tape. I'm just going to be removing the backing and then I am going to add some extra adhesive, just some tacky glue on the back. That way here I know that this is going to stay together. Now you can add that panel to cover up everything on the back side. This ornament could definitely be used as a gift tag. I think that would be wonderful to gift. I think this turned out so cute. So I thought I would show you an alternative to that same ornament we just created, this time using a square die set, and you can see that this is a slimline card and I am able to get 2 images out of this particular card. So I am just lining up the die where I want it to cut out, and then again using my washi tape I'm going to tape the die down so it doesn't move when I go to cut it. So once you've cut through the first time, then you just need to move your die in place and again just line it up on the image that you want to use for your ornament. These images are so beautiful. I love that. So again, I just trimmed out the edge with some of that vintage lace, and this time I'm using this mini pom-pom trim to outline our card. So this time around, I just do strips of our trim and I just add a line of hot glue and then press the trim into place and then use my scissors, of course, to cut off the end. And that's how easy this one is. I really like how this one turned out. I love the beautiful winter scene. So I'm using this really pretty eyelash trim for my hanger and I just cut it down to size and again use my hot glue gun. And then I add foam tape just as the last one and then cover the back with a square white cardstock panel, and then it's ready to either gift or hang on your tree. So for this one, you're going to need a tea-stained doily and some vintage sheet music. I had found this lid. Yes, it's grubby from paint, but it was the size that I needed for the center of our doily. I am going to cut out and trace around this lid on both of our sheets of music, as I need 2 circles. So I was inspired by Pinterest yet again, but my friend Mom Dus from Creative DIY with Mom Dus did something similar. I'm gonna have her channel linked down below so you can go check her out. Okay, so my 2 circles are cut out. And I decided that I wanted to distress the edges, so I'm using this distressed ink called Frayed Burlap, and I'm applying ink just to the edges with a makeup sponge. So I felt like the color blended in too much with our doily, so I decided to add a bit of this green color called peeled paint, and I just randomly apply that to the edge, and I really liked how that turned out a whole lot better. It just added just enough contrast between the edges of the paper and the doily. So now I am going to be using a glue stick and adhere it to the front and the back side of the doily. This is the Jot brand. It's what I had in my stash. It actually works really well, but my favorite glue stick is the Woohoo brand, but I was all out, so I'm just using my Jot's glue sticks. So I'm generously applying it to the back of our sheet music and then pressing it down onto the doily. I'll use a bone folder to smooth it out. So I'll do the same thing on the back side, and then once I have all my pieces in place, I like to add a little bit of weight and then allow it to dry. The weight will prevent it from curling. So while the doily is drying, now I am going to be using this craft paper cardstock, and I am going to be covering it with some tea stained book paper, and I want to cover the front and the back side, and then I'll set that aside and allow it to dry. I decided to distress the edges of this piece as well using the Frayed Burlap. So our doily is all nice and dry. I'm folding it in half, and then I'm going to be cutting it down along that fold line to create 2 half circles. Okay, so I am going to be folding this bottom up so the tip is about 3/4 of the way up on the edge. Next, I'm going to be flipping it over, and I'm going to create a fold line against that edge that we already had on the base. I'll be folding it over again and doing the same thing. What we're doing is creating a folded Christmas tree, and as you can see, there's like some scallops all the way up to create a tree look. If you have a little bit of extra at the top, as I do, you can just trim that off with some scissors, or you can fold it over on the back side if you are going to be using this as an embellishment for something. But since we are using ours as a Christmas ornament, I decided to trim off that excess. So next I am going to be adding our hanger. I have this thinner crochet string, and I am going to be adding it into the middle fold of our tree. I'm just adhering it with a little bit of hot glue, and then I'll press that string into place, and there you have a hook. I'm just going to check to make sure that it hangs evenly on my finger, and it does, which is great. Now I am going to glue all our folds together. So again, I'm just using a glue stick, and you just want to make sure that you don't have any excess glue. So it's best to add your glue to the inside flap, as you can see right here, and then you can fold it back over. And I always like to smooth things out using my boned folder. So once you have all your pieces all glued together, you can just add a little extra glue as needed in spots, and then press it down and then allow it to dry. So now I'm adding this book page piece that I had created, and it's going to be the tree trunk. So I'm just adhering this using some hot glue on the back side. You could use sheet music if you prefer, but I really like the contrast that this had created. So you can embellish your tree any way you'd like. I'm just adding this little vintage button to the top of our tree, and that is it. It was so easy to put together, and I just love how it looks. Again, this would make a really great gift topper. So I've dug out my Sizzix machine and this window die set. I'm gonna try to find a window die set for you in my Amazon affiliate store. I'm just using the window frame and the window box. It measures 3 inches by about 4.5 inches. You can definitely find a template online and print it out and then use that to trace and cut out. But I'm just using my die set because that's what I have on hand. Now I'm choosing a wood grain paper that I had in my stash, and I am going to cut my window frame so the wood grain goes up and down along with our frame. So I'm going to also need some Christmas cards. I picked these ones up from the thrift store and I loved the winter scenes. So I'm just playing around with our die and I wanted to select a winter scene to go within our window frame. I really like this one here with the little house in the background. I'm using a black pen and I'm just going to create some registration marks just so I know where to cut out our image so it will fit within our frame. I'm going to be using my paper trimmer to cut my image out, and I'm just following the registration marks that I had created. You could definitely use a ruler and create a line and then use scissors. Or you could use an X-Acto knife, just use whatever you have on hand. So my image is all cut out, and now I decided to distress the edges of our window frame just to make it look old and weathered. I am using the framed burlap, and I like to use a little cosmetic sponge just to apply the ink. And then I'll let that dry. And I do the same thing for the window frame and the window box. Using this small makeup applicator helps you to get into these little spots like you can see here. So I'll be using my tacky glue to attach all my pieces together. So I have also cut out a white panel that's going to go on the back side of this ornament, but I need to attach our winter scene first. So I am adding some glue to the back of our picture frame, and then I am going to place it onto our image. Once the glue has set enough, then you could add your hanger. So I'm just using that gold string that I had in my stash, and I'm going to attach it to the back side with some hot glue. I didn't add knots as I didn't want to create too much bulk in the back. And now I am going to be adding the window box. So I am going to be using my foam tape, and I adhere it to the back side of the window box. I leave enough space at the top of the window box, as you can see here, as I am going to be adding something between the window box and our frame, and I just needed a little bit of space to work with. So just as the previous card ornaments that we created, I am going to be using some foam tape on the back side of this panel, and then adding our white cardstock panel to cover everything up so you don't see all the mechanics of our work. Okay, so now we're gonna start to decorate. I had this greenery in my stash. I picked it up from a store called Daiso a couple of years ago, but use anything that you have in your stash. I'm just cutting it down to size, and then I'm going to be using some hot glue on the inside of the window box, and then I'll be pressing the greenery down inside just to make it look like it's actually growing up out of the window box, or as if we've decorated the window box with some evergreens. I'm adding another piece to the front of the panel. I wanted to make this really look nice and full, like an actual window box at Christmas time. For some added interest, I am adding just a few of the pieces of green to the top corner, as you see here. If you find that any of the pieces of green covers up the scenery on your image, just trim it off, and here I just added that little leaf back in so it didn't cover up our little house. Now I'm adding some little pip berries. I got these red little pip berries from Dollar Tree, and I thought they'd be so cute tucked in amongst the greenery. So I'm just using some hot glue and I'm placing them randomly throughout. I love how this turned out. It is so fun and whimsical, and definitely would be beautiful as a gift tag or an ornament. So I went into my stash of some thrifted Christmas cards, and I love this one with the barn scene. There's so many images to use on this one. This one's got foiling on the front, but I decided just to use some of the images on the back side. But first I needed to cut out a 2-inch wide strip of cardstock. For now I am using this brown cardstock, but I do end up switching it out. I need this piece to also be 4 1/4 inch long. So for this project, I am using my scoreboard. I am going to score at the 2-inch mark and the 2 1/4 inch mark. And then I'm going to be folding at those spots, as we are going to be creating a little book ornament. So this is going to be the cover, and now I am just going to be figuring out what images I want to use. I really like these red barns here, so I'm just going to mark out where I need to cut it. So I just created some lines along the edge, and I created some dots so I knew where the edge of my score lines were. So now I am going to be using my paper trimmer. You don't have to do this part. You can definitely just use your scissors, but my paper trimmer was like right beside me, so that's what I grabbed. So I'm just cutting along those lines, and I'm just cutting out the image here, and they end up fitting perfectly on our panels. So this is where I decided to switch out for white cardstock. It went with the images a whole lot better. Now I am going to be using this crochet cotton string, and why I'm adding this is because I'm creating a closure for our book so it doesn't stay open the entire time while hanging on the tree. I'm just using my tacky glue, and I am going to evenly place our string into the glue, and I'll allow that to set up a little bit. But first I'm adding some glue using my glue stick, and I'm also using some tacky glue just along the edge. I'll be spreading that out, and then I'm going to be adhering our panels. So you want to take your panel and you want to line it up with the score mark that we created for the spine of our book. If you have any overhang, it's okay, we can trim that off, but you do definitely want to make sure that the one edge is lined up with the spine. Here I'm just pulling the string to make sure it's not too loose, and then I'm going to allow it to dry. So while our book cover is drying, I am going to be cutting out the sheets of paper that are going to go inside our book. I'm cutting out some white copy paper that's 1 3/4 inch wide. I will cut down a total of 4 strips. I am going to be making some registration marks that are 1 3/4 inches apart. Now, if you can figure out the math, then by all means, just keep your ruler stationary, but I'm not very good at math here, so I just did it what was easiest for me, and that was just moving our ruler every 1 3/4 inches. If you have any excess, as I did on the end here, you can just trim that off. Okay, so I'm using a ruler to create my fold lines at each registration mark. You can definitely use the scoreboard if you have it, but I thought I would just show you how you could do this by using a metal ruler. Next, you can fold your paper and just make sure it's all even and create an accordion fold. You'll want to do the same for each strip of paper. So all 4 of our strips of paper have been folded, and now I need to attach all 4 of the pieces together. So I'm just lining them all up, as you can see here, to make a continuous accordion fold strip. I'll be attaching each piece using my glue stick, and I'll use my bone folder to smooth it all out. You just want to make sure that you line up your pieces properly, just so that nothing will be out of alignment. So our book cover is all dry, and then I decided to add some red ink to the edges of the outside and inside of our panel, just for a little bit of pop of color. So now I'm going to be working on the spine. I have this white ribbon trim that is the exact width. It is 1/4 inch wide, and I just cut it down to size, and I'm going to attach it to the spine using our hot glue gun. And then of course trim off the ends as needed. So I decided to use this red and white baker's twine for our ornament hanger. I'm just wrapping it around the spine, as you see here. I'll add a little line of hot glue down the middle of our white ribbon on the exterior of our spine. And then I'm going to be trimming it off and tying our string at the top of our book. I don't glue down the string on the inside just yet, and I'll show you why in just a minute, but I do tie it off on the top, and that will help hold it all into place. So I decided I wanted to cover the front panels of our book cover as well, so I'm got these little pieces of scrapbook paper that I had in my stash, and they happen to be the perfect size. So I just added a bit of red ink to the edges, and again, I'll just be using my glue stick and adhering these to the inside of the panels. If there's any excess overhang of paper, you can just trim it off. Again, you just want to make sure that you line the edge up to our score lines on the inside of our panel. Okay, so now it's time to add our book pages. I'm adding a generous amount of hot glue to the inside spine of our book cover, and I press our book pages into the glue. And you just want to make sure you add them so that the spine of our pages go into the glue, and you can see how easy it is to open the pages just like a regular book. I tie off our ornament hook with a knot on the top, and then you can tie off your closure in a bow. You can definitely decorate this book up any way you'd like, but I thought it was so fun. You can include little pictures or little stories inside. This will be a great keepsake for years to come. So as always, I would absolutely love to know which ornament was your favorite. Maybe it was all of them, and let me know if you decide to make one of these. I want to thank you all so much for being here today. I had so much fun sharing these with you all, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.